Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Monday, April 7th, 2025. Time for another show, I believe, while we still have an economy, while we still have a country. The opening bell, what are we, about half an hour away, right? Why don't they open at 9:30? I thought we should be running the business like a business and opening at 9. How is it that they open at 9:30? Anyway, pre-opening bell action around the world in the futures markets, etc., off-hours trading, all indicates that it's not going to be a pleasant day on Wall Street. And what can I tell you? Everybody knows why. It was a big tariff weekend. Not for Trump, of course. He left and went to play golf. And in fact, left early. So he took a long weekend while everything else collapsed. And everybody's had their eye on the tariffs since. Lots of very interesting copium going on in Wall Street and in the business classes. People insisting, no, they didn't make a mistake in voting for Trump. They just didn't vote for these tariff things. And don't worry, because he's really only using it as a negotiating tactic to force other countries to drop their tariffs, some of which they don't actually have, but they'll drop them anyway. And they'll all be measured against his metric of import duties, which has, nothing to do with how much they actually charge for our imports. We discussed before we left on Friday the ludicrous formula that they put together, which was really just they were trying to figure out what trade barriers do we think other countries are putting up against us, and can't we impose tariffs that would take the same bite out of them. And so all they did was they did this very odd thing, which was turning trade deficits with other countries into percentages by dividing the deficit by the total trade from that country, total imports from that country. And then they put some Greek letters in there to make it look like it was a serious formula, but they picked values for the Greek letters that canceled out. You remember hearing something. Well, as it turns out, the business world is now discovering all of this and writing serious scholarly papers. Bill Ackman is very up in arms. He's pointing at an AEI analysis. What they did see is they chose the wrong values for this. And they chose values that would go away. They needed to make their dumb approximation that, the Trump administration guys, or Trump in himself anyway, seems to think that all sorts of any barrier to trade should be viewed as a tariff, even if the barrier to trade is they don't want what we're selling, or they don't have enough money to buy what we're selling. And so therefore we're going to punish them for all of that. It's also becoming clear, and it's dawning on people, that, his idea of what trade is also isn't, in keeping with normal people's understanding of trade. If we pay money to another country in exchange for goods, we're suckers because now they've got our money. That's the total analysis. And, you can't run trade that way. Anyway, he went and played golf and ignored everything. The rest of the country actually paid attention to everything. Not only did they find out about the tariffs, but as it turns out, some number of millions of them decided to spend the day out of doors on Saturday, not always in great weather, but in some places very pleasant, which made for good crowds, which was what turned out to be, I only sort of discovered the organizing principle behind these things on Friday, the hands-off protests organized all around the country. There were even some locally here. And so, lots of people came out, made signs, a lot of signs that were in common across multiple protests. Not hard to believe, though, when people have been talking about this online for some time. So, and of course, newspapers in America dutifully ignoring, for the most part, all of those things. But there are such reports. There are even photographs, and we are aware of these things. Greg Dworkin is here, and let's see. I mean, I love the intro that we've got for him these days, although it is a little long, right? And
it takes up my entire segment, actually.
You've expressed some reservations about that one, but there's this whole Look here. We can
My
try this
ermine
one.
robe keeps falling off, and
Yeah.
the crown just tilts.
How about
it's
this?
really
Let's
heavy.
see. We've got a website with some other choices here. Is that better?
That's much better.
Okay.
It's like
We
Mountain
have to
Dew
keep it
kinda,
royalty
thing.
free, but yes. Well, how are you, jolly fellow that you are?
Well, I'm great because the Yukon women did a beatdown
Ah.
and wound up being national champions where they belong and deserve. But all credit to Dawn Staley's team. Here's a little known
Hey.
fact.
All right.
The fabulous freshman,
Huh.
Strong, who plays for Yukon,
Okay.
her mom was a professional women's basketball player.
That sounds promising.
So was Dawn Staley, the coach of South Carolina.
Ah.
They played on the same team. They were teammates.
All right. Well, it's a small world, I would assume.
Yeah. So Dawn Staley's teammate,
Hey.
her daughter, beat Dawn Staley's team.
And
Dawn Staley
I don't know,
has
that
creds. I mean, she's
counts
just
as
an
consolation,
absolutely
but-
fabulous coach.
Yeah.
And, you can't be champions unless you beat her team, which, by the way, we did.
Yeah, well, okay, that's true. That happened, and yeah, that is an interesting thing. I
All
wonder how you
credit to
feel
South
about
Carolina. I mean, they are
It's gotta
championship
be-
material. So
Sure, of course, and there's kind of a. I'm sure that look, professionally
And they'll be
speaking,
back.
I wanted to witness. Yes, it must be. There's got to be something like, oh yeah, my teammate's daughter. That's
well,
kinda cool.
as one of the
If I
South
gotta
Carolina players,
if I gotta lose,
UConn is a great team, but more importantly, they played great. We didn't.
yeah. Did they recruit her? I wonder. Probably, right? And
I don't know.
Well, it would make some sense.
I don't know if they got along.
Oh yeah, and that's true too. Oh, you're my teammate.
I
And
just know that they were teammates. I
just
don't know
look,
if they were friends.
Shut up and dribble, they said to one another.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so what'd you do over the weekend? Were there, by the way, any protests in the area for you?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. There was a
they were
local
everywhere.
protest. There was a protest in the bigger city, Danbury, next to Newtown. There were protests all
Mhm.
over,
Yes,
and there
big
were great
cities,
signs. And I
small
have to tell you,
towns.
it was covered really extensively in the nightly news. It was the lead-up
That's
story.
good. Well, yeah, you know what? I didn't monitor the television coverage as much because television, but
Right, but it reaches seniors.
Yeah, right. And a lot of whom were there. They were turning on the news to see if they were on TV.
Yeah,
was a
so there were
very
two things on
older
TV:
skewing
Trump
thing.
protests and the fact that the markets had crashed. Those are the two main stories.
That will occupy seniors.
Oh, and also UConn won. So those are the stories.
Oh,
that-
yeah.
that
Oh,
cover.
and a big programming change. I understand for the first time probably ever, Fox News just stopped running the stock tickers on their
Yeah, they
screen.
can't run the they won't run them today either.
Yeah.
Because,
Oh,
as
right,
you
well,
pointed out, futures are already down 900, and we'll
It's
see what
a
happens.
suicide prevention measure, I think.
Something like that.
All right. Well, yeah, it's been wild. We're coming back off of the weekend. Trump did use his transit to and from golf to make more crazy pronouncements. We'll see if we pick through some of those. But generally speaking, the weekends are quieter because he's busier with more golf. But the Gab
especially
Fests
as
on
the
the
weather
way
gets
to and
nicer,
from.
or he goes to Florida. So
Yeah.
Jeff Stein, who's the financial reporter for the Washington Post,
Mm.
had this to say,
Hello, Jeff.
and he said, "I really feel for the Silicon Valley and Wall Street types expressing surprise at Trump's tariffs."
I try not to, but yeah.
He says, "Who could have even thought to pay attention to his campaign speeches, the policy positions on his website, dozens, if not hundreds, of newspaper articles, nationally televised debates, or try to talk to people in his inner orbit? The information was practically impossible to come by."
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty remarkable that anybody would pretend not to have. No, they also spent the weekend, his team, publicizing how he's been talking about tariffs since the 80s, 90s, for some reason, which, of course, never registered with him. I don't know. People have been rejecting my ideas outright for 40 years. Maybe they're bad.
Let me tell you. Let me explain to you the difference between small business and big business. Okay, big
Size?
business looks at Trump,
Yeah.
and they say, "Well, we know he's lying. We lie. I mean, that's okay.
That's his
That's
approach
not
to
even
living,
a stopper there."
Hmm.
The thing is, I don't know what he's lying about, and it's making me a little nervous because I can't really predict at this point. I thought he was lying about the tariffs.
Yeah.
And if he's not, we're screwed, and oh my God, and I think I'll jump out the window.
Yeah, don't wait. Well,
Small
who are we
business
talking about?
looks at Trump and says, we don't trust him. He stiffs everybody.
Yeah,
I'm a
I've been
small business. He stiffs me. I'm out of,
right.
I mean, I totally get it. I'm not down on this. I'm not with this at all.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
so small business is easy to convince that this is a disaster. Big business is still holding out because they know he's lying. They just haven't figured out what he's lying about. It doesn't bother them,
yeah. I guess
but
that's a
they
fundamental difference
haven't
there
figured out
too.
how to make money out of it yet. And so
Mm.
now they're waking up and realizing it. Maybe he's not lying. Maybe he meant it, like Jeff Stein
Whoops.
said. Maybe they're going to do maybe they really are that stupid.
Well, it's
And
giving
if
every
we
indication
have a
that.
global business here, we're a big business. He's going to wreck us.
Yeah.
This is not good. And that's why there's a bloodbath on Wall Street. And one insider trader said, if people really accepted that Trump is going to do this, the market would be down 40%.
Oh dear. Well, it's about that.
Well, it's going to be by
Mm.
the time they finish.
Yeah, I mean, I think over the past couple of, well, actually, I mean, given the last couple rounds of tariff scares and backing off, I guess it's probably, well, it's over 10% probably on net since inauguration. But I don't know. There's numbers out there for that. People have been charting that for a long time. But it was, down like 5% last week. It's down almost 5% in the futures.
Right.
So we'll see whether that sticks this morning. I'm not exactly certain how that translates, but.
So Larry Summers,
Mhm.
not one to mince words, and generally on the side of the big business people, says this is a moment of testing for real Donald Trump's advisors. He says the intellectually real Donald Trump is his handle on Twitter. The intellectually honest ones know this reflects the president's 40-year fixation, not any kind of a proven economic theory.
No.
This is the economic equivalent of what creationism is to biology or what ending vaccines is to medicine.
Hmm.
The question is whether his advisors are going to have the courage to tell him and the courage to step away from being part of these policies if he's not willing to readjust.
Yeah.
So the assumption, and he's not lying and he's really stupid, and he's got economic advisors around him like Peter Navarro who are equally
Holy,
stupid.
yeah.
And what about the Treasury Secretary and the so-called grown-ups in the room? Are there any left, and what are they going to do? And that's the question Summers is posing.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, no one knows. A lot of Sunday show appearances, which give no indication of any, uh, no indication of any understanding. Like wink, wink. I know this is not going to go well, but I
No,
have to
I
say
mean,
it's
what's
good.
his name?
Not even
Howard
that.
Lutnick. He's another stupid guy,
Yeah.
who just blusters and
He
yells, and
sometimes says things that
he's one
are
of these guys
partially
who you
true.
could easily slide right into Tom Homan's position as chief thug for the border because he's
Yes.
just an a-hole, who yells at you.
They're all
Lawrence,
putting on a
and
show.
that's the other thing.
Yeah.
People just don't still grasp after all these years. Being an asshole is not the same thing as being a strong person.
Well, you could very
They're
strongly be
different
an asshole.
things.
Yeah.
No, I'm strong because I yell at you and do
Yeah.
nasty things to screw up your family because that shows I'm tough.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't.
It is a widespread belief and an increasingly popular one. There's a whole
You
sector
want to
of
prove
trying
you're
to
tough? We'll
teach
do it with your
teenage
family. We'll
kids
see
to
how
do that.
you
Yeah,
react to it.
that's true. Try that in a small town, one might say.
Yes. So here's another Lauren Summers comment on Twitter. The markets think companies are going to be worth $5 trillion less than they thought before these tariffs started. Now, I don't know how much $5 trillion
It's
really
like you take
amounts to, but
four and then
that's like a
add
lot of money.
25% more. Yeah, that's my formula for it, by the way.
Yeah, yeah.
Omega something something.
Right. If you throw in some Greek letters, it sounds like you went to MIT. So if you add in the loss to consumers, a reasonable estimate would probably be something like 30 trillion. Now, how big is all of this?
Boy.
The loss to the economy is like if all oil prices doubled, which, by the way, they're dropping like a stone. How are you supposed to drill, baby, drill when you can't afford to take it out of the ground? If prices of gasoline went to
Yeah, you can
$6 or
still drill.
$7 per gallon,
Yeah.
it'd be like that. We've never seen
Hey.
anything like this before, to quote Donald Trump.
That's true. That's one of his favorite crutches.
He said,
Like you've never
Summers, we've
seen
never seen
before.
anything like this before. And I say, he's quoting Donald Trump.
Yes, very strongly. Okay. Yeah, it's
So it's
getting
bad.
Yeah. And we are 15 minutes away from seeing how bad in the initial, but all the overseas markets, pretty much what they expected, 5, 8 plus
Yes, yes,
percent.
but for $30 trillion worth of damage, you maybe, if
Mm,
things work perfectly, according to what Trump claims,
yeah.
which is risky, you're going to
Uh,
make $200 billion.
yeah. What, how?
You lose 30 trillion, but you're going to make 200 billion, a
Yeah,
number you
that's
can wrap your head around.
that's true.
That's what
Now, if
happens.
you yeah, if you subtract, if you take the difference between the two, that's a loss. But the point is, you'll be making 200 billion.
Yeah, one of the Twitter commenters pointed out this from a guy who went bankrupt 6 times,
Uh,
and the only business he's ever succeeded in doing is
yeah.
making hats.
Is he in the black on the red hats? Maybe.
Probably. They do
I don't know.
sell.
Well, that's true. And
Of
they
course, they're more
are
expensive
buying
now,
them cheap because, well, now they will because they've been buying them from China. They'll now be 35% more expensive
at
if
least.
if they even ship, which they might not. Uh, yeah, not lots of fallout that they haven't figured on, and knock-on effects, as they sometimes say, from all of this as people figure out how they're going to react to it. And in many cases, they're reacting to it by saying, it doesn't matter what the tariff is, it's too much, or we have to at least give a pause. There's just going to be a huge interruption in the supply of everything.
Right.
Completed, built, and shipped cars from, now I understand, Volkswagen and Audi group, I guess the same ownership group there. They've built the cars, they've shipped them, they're sitting in port. They haven't paid their tariffs yet, but they now have announced anything that arrived after April 2nd, the date they announced, I guess, the tariff rates, is going to be held. So, like, there's no new supply of Audis or Volkswagens to dealers in this country, or people who are waiting on their delivery are going to not only not get their car, but are going to find out, oh, you now have to pay another 25, 35% on that car if you want us to deliver it to you. And, well, that'll surprise a lot of people as well. And as we say, the knock-on effects from that. What does it mean when I find out that the car I contracted to buy is no longer affordable to me, and I got to try to wiggle my way out of it? A, see if I can get out of the contract. B, try and go find another car. C, what am I losing while I don't have the car? Business-wise, writ large. And he writes large. Everything is very strongly large.
Yep.
It'll be interesting to
So
watch, and hopefully we survive and that sort of thing.
here's another random comment from
Yeah.
Twitter. No, this is actually from Blue Sky this one.
Yay, because Twitter sucks. Yeah.
Feral Joe says that's the thing. They don't really worship Trump and company. They worship memes and propaganda versions of Trump and company.
Yes.
So again, it's like let's throw out everything that has worked and replace it with stuff that sounds good, and that never ends well. So that especially applies to farmers in the rural areas. And
And
so
in the
that's my
Dell.
segue into talking about this piece from Greg Sargent. So
Yes.
when he says Greg, he's talking about Greg Sargent.
Yeah, that other guy.
From the New Republic. And he's talking about Tom Schaller, with Tom Schaller.
Well, that's weird.
Trump voters suddenly shocked at how badly he screwed them. As farmers start realizing they'll be devastated by Trump's tariffs, the author of a book about MAGA country digs into the true nature of his rural support and how Democrats should try to reverse it. And it's a deeply pessimistic view of what farmers are actually going to do. They're going to complain. They're going to be shocked. They didn't think this was coming. They are not prepared for it. They can't afford it. They're going to go bankrupt. But they've basically, as Tom Frank wrote years and years ago, 20 years ago now, what's the matter with Kansas?
Oh, yeah.
They've put their social and cultural values well above economic values. And that's why they vote the way they do. And so Trump ruins their business, and they say to themselves, okay, but fine, I'm not voting for a baby killer.
Yeah, that'll learn them.
Well, it won't.
Maybe you're not voting at all.
But, that's the thing. You're not looking to change votes. If you can't vote for a Democrat because of that, that's fine. So Greg Sargent says, speaking of Trump's zero-sum worldview, in which there are only winners and losers, he's already raging about what China did with its retaliatory tariffs.
No.
Trump puts 35% on China. China puts 35% on the U.S. That's going to hurt farmers. 20% of their business comes from overseas, soybeans and all of that. On Truth Social, in all caps on Friday, he said China played it wrong. They panicked. The one thing they can't afford to do, the one thing China doesn't do is panic. They do long-term thinking. So Tom Schaller says, look, everybody knows that a bully is really just a coward with a rich daddy and a big microphone. And, of course, Trump is both of those things, a bully who had a rich daddy and a big mouth. But inside, he's just a coward, and the coward usually picks on the weak. China's not one of those countries. So, what happens with the farmers? Well, the problem is not just rural Americans, of course, but also working-class Americans who live in the cities and suburbs.
Yes.
Who have jobs around the medium household income, which is about $55,000, $65,000 a year. And the problem is when everybody says, when Tom Frank before us, or when we say they're voting against their interests, I think we have to be very clear. They apply greater salience or weight to their social and cultural interests than they do their ability to cover their healthcare costs or their ability to limit their copays and out-of-pocket expenses. And on the economic side of the equation, they're voting in many cases against their economic interests, and that's a problem. And I think Democrats and liberals are on the horns of a dilemma. You can't say, ha, 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 FAFO. You screwed around, now you found out, and you vote for what you got, and you got what you voted for. And as H.L. Mencken said, you're going to get your democracy good and hard right here, which is not a very empathetic or liberal attitude. But, of course, these people are voting against the economic interests of the rest of the country, too. And in the process, denigrating suburbanites and urbanites and criticizing them. And they would take the victory laps if they won. So I don't think we should have retaliatory, vindictive, vengeful attitudes, but Democrats should point out these inconsistencies at the very least. However, racial resentment and their cultural attachments, they still think that the cities are stealing all their money and giving it to minorities to buy phones.
They do.
They do. They think that.
Yeah.
They're like dogs on a bone with a lot of these culture and social issues, and their belief that cities get all the money and everybody's looking down on them. They pay taxes and it goes to minorities for Obama phones.
Yeah.
You can't convince them otherwise on this stuff, Schaller writes. So you continue to vote for the people to sell them those red meat cultural policies. And, how does that work out in real life? Take COVID. In the beginning, you'd think that rural areas would do better because they have social distancing built in.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They did okay before vaccines. Once vaccine came, then urban and suburban areas did much better, and rurals refused the vaccines, and they died.
Yeah.
They didn't want to wear masks. They died.
Well, they're not going to
even though rural America has a built-in social distancing advantage, they had lower rates for the vaccine, but they should have had even lower rates after, and they didn't. They had 2.4 times the death rate of the national average. Yeah. So if you look at the charts of Trump support and rurality, they go up like this. The more rural the area, the more they support Trump. Same charts. They track rurality with vaccine, and it's the opposite. So the Trumpier the county, the less likely people took the vaccine. So it's economic murder-suicide. And so what do you do? And the problem is where they get their information, he says. I spent time in rural Pennsylvania the weekend before the election in places like Cumberland and Lancaster. Lancaster is the one, Lancaster County, which is partly Amish County. That's where the Democrat had an upset in that recent state election in Pennsylvania. We didn't see Republicans out in the streets because they don't do field campaigns. It's all digital and electronic and through people's phones. And it's really hard to get face-to-face with people anymore. So Democrats got to get on the local radio shows. They got to talk to people. They have to create their own local radio shows. They have to get on the podcasts.
Get a horse and buggy.
They're living in an informational vacuum or a silo. See, they should be on our show so they could reach these rural areas.
Right. Yeah, and they have real silos they have to get to. It's not just a metaphorical silo. Oh, yeah.
And then he points out, we look at blue sky today.
Yeah.
Okay, what
I
they
will.
point out is that Fox News and OANN are not One American Network News.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
not even putting the market reports up there. They're not showing the Dow. They're not showing the tickers because
Hmm.
they know their listeners and viewers cannot handle negative news. They need to be constantly reinforced with nonstop pro-red, pro-Republican, pro-Trump, pro-MAGA news because they, as Jack Nicholson would say, they can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
So we need to break through that and force them to listen to alternative messages, but that's really tough.
Hmm.
And, you have these incredibly obnoxious hosts who bring guests on to
Hmm.
reinforce the
Hey.
idea. No, this is a good idea. We're not losing money. We're actually making money.
Sure.
And everybody's going to be really proud of how we're bringing that. No, it's going to take a little while, and so the propaganda's there. The propaganda network is solid. The real question still, and we talked about this last week a little bit, is what are the electeds in Washington going to do? Because they can't afford to ignore reality completely.
Yeah, they're not supposed to be able to do that. I mean, I don't know what they are going to do, and I understand. What did I saw Stephen Dennis saying, there's a multiple weeks long recess scheduled coming up, which I don't think I even registered.
Yeah, they're going to go home and they're going to talk to their constituents.
Oh, they're going to have some
And
things
even
to
if they
say.
don't want to talk to their constituents are going to talk to them.
Yeah, sometimes these constituents. By the way, I don't know whether there's any more plans for organizing a big rally day again.
Yes, there is.
Good. Well, they don't talk to me and tell me this. I just find out like everybody else does by asking Greg, and Greg says yes, so I'll go. But this also gives us the opportunity to organize some of these things outside of the district offices of the people who are going to be home for the next couple of weeks. And in many cases, it's going to happen anyway because they co-locate their offices with those sorts of public squares anyway. So, should be fun. We'll be back in 1 minute while the prices drop.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We had a protest over the break. I wasn't sure if we were going to come back, but we're not afraid to come out and meet our detractors. There's none of them on the air, so it makes it really easy. So that's cool.
Well, on this show, we're all about process, so we don't do protests. I just reclaim my time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's not a protest forum. What can I tell you? But so I did. We had a protest in our area. And several, because I'm in the Washington, D.C. area. So there was one big, giant one in D.C., and then lots of peripheral satellite ones for suburbanites like me who say, I'm not going on the metro or driving in
the next national one is already scheduled for April 19th. I think they're going to continue.
A weekend, it says.
We shall see.
It's funny. Yeah.
And just like the Tesla boycotts.
This one was a weekend, too.
I don't mean the Tesla firebombings. I mean the Tesla boycotts.
Yeah.
Very effective. Tesla as a brand is finished. Yeah. Like it's not cool anymore.
Right.
And that works. These
on a large scale.
This past weekend were the lead story on national news. So I think that's effective protest. Doing something like wearing a pin or getting up and walking out or being rude during a presidential speech, not so effective.
It has its place, and really, just you want to basically add to the fabric of effective protest anywhere you can. The Tesla takedown protests continued over the weekend, and in some cases coordinated with the directly anti-Trump protests. Although there's obviously an anti-Trump element to Tesla.
It's a hands-off protest.
Yes, that's what they're calling it.
But it's not entirely about Trump. There were people that went to the protests and interviewed protesters.
Yeah.
These are generally pissed off people. They're not so happy with Democrats either. They're unhappy with government.
Yeah.
It's a true Tea Party-ish kind of grassroots movement in the sense that they don't want small government and garbage stuff, and they're not making up their grievances. But they're just not happy. They're not happy with Congress. They're not happy with Republicans. It's not just Trump. And they're not happy with Democrats who don't protest enough.
That's true, too. And it led, I think, the New York Times to briefly go with a subheader somewhere that made it sound like people complained. They changed it, too. It's nice that they were responsive. But that sort of approach to people headed out to protest the fact that they felt like Democrats weren't standing up to Trump. Well, that wasn't the protest.
That wasn't the protest.
But so they did change that. But again, it's like, how do you miss this? Again, you guys are a news organization. Yeah, you could have interviewed somebody, probably even at a diner afterwards. It would have worked just fine. So I'm glad there's
their interview style doesn't lend itself to that. It's okay. I immediately found somebody who's really ticked off with Trump, and then after digging and finding somebody who is equally pissed off with Democrats, I can now present one of each.
Yeah.
And
that's
so
true.
that's my interview
And there
style.
are. And there were plenty.
And everything I did was accurate. Don't yell at me for being inaccurate. I'm a very good reporter. I wrote down exactly what they said. I didn't follow up and find out the anti-Democrat person was the chair of the local Republican Party. That's beyond my pay grade. But I'm just telling you, this is accurately what they said. Don't yell at me.
Yeah. Well, it was a very interesting weekend, and Sunday was online. On Sunday was the usual follow up to a big push like that, a big movement. The critique of the movement from people who didn't organize the first movement. Yeah. So it was kind of
totally uninteresting. I'll tell you something else, which is a little more interesting, but just as annoying.
Yeah,
are the people who are trying to somehow make some positive point about how tariffs might, in certain circumstances, different than what we have right now, and not at all like what Trump is doing, nonetheless somehow might help. And there's tons of people like that, including the UAW president, Sean Fain.
Yeah. Well, look, there's a traditional understanding of tariffs as protectionism, and the domestic manufacturing is traditionally the people you end up protecting. So
right.
I guess
except when you don't, because it's not domestic manufacturing anymore.
Right.
And as soon as they put the tariffs on, a lot of UAW members were laid off.
Yeah, because now it costs too much to supply them with the parts they use to do their work.
Right. So sometimes you scratch your head and say, okay, listen, Democrats bailed out your pension to the tune of billions, Teamsters.
Yes. Yeah. We did do that.
Okay. And walked a picket line and supported your strikes. And you frickin' voted for Republicans. And I'm in FAFO mode with these guys. I love unions, but God damn it, what are you doing?
Well, they have to live in the real world in order to be effective. And sometimes tough love, you hope it works with them. What can I tell you? There's not too much you can do to manipulate the situation. Economy is what it is. We're not going to be able to just magically patch it for you if you keep teaming up with the killers.
Right, exactly. There are people who are trying to ruin the economy, who are so anti-labor, I can't even begin to give you the list. And why are you supporting them?
I don't know.
I know your members like these guys, but for all the wrong reasons. And during the election, you were much better about it. Why are you doing this now? Well, they won. We have to go with what our members are, your leadership. That's the point of leadership. Leadership isn't to follow.
That's true. But then we won't be leaders anymore. They're going to kick us out. Well, what can you do? Go to the diner.
Yeah, talk to Congress.
All right. Well,
they have that same mindset as well, and you're not happy with them. In fact, that's why there are all these protests that are including, we're not happy with Congress either.
Oh, yeah, lots of those ones. Do your job. A lot of do your job signs. So,
Oh, you
exciting.
really think this is a good idea? I tell you what, leaders, why don't you have a town meeting?
Yeah, we'll tell you whether we think it's a good idea or
See
not.
what they say. All right, don't just sing the
Yeah, mostly
praises
no.
of the president on television so that he could use it for propaganda purposes. He's using you, you know it, and why are you letting him?
Yeah, why? All right. Well, it's a good question, and you'll
Well,
have the
because people
opportunity
suck
if
up
you.
to power, that's why.
Yeah. Oh, well, easy question. Anybody who missed this weekend, you're away, busy, tied to railroad tracks, whatever might have happened. April 19th, very soon, is your next
Yeah.
opportunity to. Is that
One of the
that
groups who
Easter
took part in the
weekend?
major hands-off protest, says Newsweek, have organized another day of action. The 50501 group
Yeah, I don't know
is
what
promoting
exactly that is,
nationwide.
but
I know the 505. That means you can't find your webpage, right? Or that's
at
404.
404. This looks like it looks like it's written like 5051, and I'm
Yeah.
wondering if that's like I don't know whether
Right.
that's a
We
reference
just need
to like one
vote
more
more
than
than
yeah
50.
right 50.
I
It's
don't
the
know.
nation split 50-50, but if you the one go over here, we win. I don't know
How
whether
about
that's the
50
message.
How about 50 states plus Washington D.C.? Then that would be 501.
50 states and then 50 something else
I don't
is
know what they did. The April
yeah.
5th hands-off protest marks the largest
I'll
day
look
of
it up.
public opposition to Trump
I'll
during the
look it up.
second term. And hopefully, for the demonstrators, they want to see successful turnout. Similarly, in social media posts, the group stated they want 3.5% of the U.S. population, 11 million people to participate. That's the figure. It's the threshold for sustained resistance in order to make a difference. They made
Well,
up the number, but that's cool, if
doable.
that's what they get.
Uh,
Also,
yeah.
I have to say, we
Do you have to?
are in my neighborhood here,
Yeah.
which is relatively apolitical. I'm seeing a number of U.S. flags with the notation underneath "Resisting Kings since 1776." It's a
Ah,
great sign, and it's like it's all of a
I don't
sudden
have one of those.
spontaneously it's on a lot of lawns.
Interesting. By the way, on the right side of the wackosphere, I mean the whole right side, they are pretty sure that because a lot of people sometimes have the same signs, something something George Soros.
Hmm.
So there you go. And of course our own Ernest poster is still out there. I made some kind of offhand joke about that. Well, after seeing millions and millions of people turn out, George Soros must be out of money, right? Because
Right.
of course all of them were. They did of course say everybody out there was paid protesters, which should have bankrupted George Soros.
Well, here's the
I
thing.
got
It's
some
now
nice.
international.
You're an idiot answers.
But
Yeah.
it's an international movement now, and there was some great there's some great footage out of Detroit
No.
where you can
Rock
see
City.
Canada from your front porch
Yeah.
and protest on one side of the river, and the other side of the river is Canada with protesters. It was great.
USA
And by
number
the
one.
way, 50501
Yeah.
stands for 50 states, 50 protests, one day.
Okay.
Except it's not one day. So now it has to be the 50502 movement.
Levi's 501.
What time is it? It's it's 9:40 and 1 second. No, it's 9:40 and
Well,
2 seconds. No, actually it's 9:40 and 3 seconds.
they didn't
Thank you.
think this through all the way. They're gonna have to change their logo every time they do this. Well, that's actually not a bad thing either. If this next one was 50502, but you do the website over again and
Yeah, exactly.
branding and oh boy. All right. Anyway, they can stick with it, and we can just look past the fact that the last number doesn't make any sense. One is always a good number.
Yeah.
People love one.
I don't
It's the
I don't
loneliest
like
number, but
I don't like names where you have to look it up on the internet to figure out what the hell they're talking
me
about.
neither. But
That's
if it's
me, but I'm old.
digits, it's okay because
Yeah,
it's
I don't
easy to
mind.
remember.
Whatever.
But yeah, like what you don't want is we're out here protesting for specific opposition to particular import tariffs.org.
Yeah.
Tough.
I favor No King's Day.
That was a good one. That was well represented on all the signs.
Yep.
Yeah, everybody understands that one. And I've actually been seeing some really interesting, both in the form of petitions and online postings, and in fact now even proposed articles of impeachment. Still way uphill battle, but there it is. People should be talking about it. Why not? Styling the list of grievances after the Declaration of Independence, which
Yeah,
most
Will
people
Bunch had a great
beyond
one that I led
went in
off
the
the
course.
Pundit Roundup with this morning. Will Bunch in the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Yeah.
The only national emergency is the law that empowers a mad king. And he starts off by saying, they descended on Philadelphia from all over, determined to act against the king and his establishment of absolute tyranny over these states, quote unquote. Their long list of grievances included cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, imposing taxes on us without our consent, depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury. You guessed it. Those are the founding fathers. And guess what's going on right now? It was a
all
really
those things.
nice piece.
Yep. And just pointing out from the economic perspective, because as you said, they're cutting off our trade with the rest of the world, not just, through higher tariffs, but Trump's own weird conception of what trade is. That is that if we buy $1 million worth of goods from some country, they need to buy $1 million worth of our goods or else it's unfair. And he's said that for some reason, it's in his head that fair trade is revenue neutral trade, essentially. The dollars are the equal in both directions with every country, and we're going to force it to be that way. Is an outmoded economic view, but by several hundred years, it's mercantilism, which if you remember anything, from maybe high school history, right? This is the system that was the source of so many colonial grievances. That's what they're talking about, cutting off our trade with the rest of the world. We were only permitted to trade with England and no one else. And any trade that we did, importing goods from elsewhere, had to come through England and be tariffed and handed over only at inflated prices. And they decided to kind of shoot the army over that.
So I'm sending you a screenshot. Yeah. It's 9:43, so the markets have been open for 13 minutes.
Welcome, markets.
They're already down 1,600 points. That's 4.2%. And I'm sending you a picture of the graph of the Dow Jones.
Oh, yeah.
And it's straight down.
Yeah.
I mean, you get down, up, down, up. This is just like straight down, dropping like a rock.
Yeah, that's
15 minutes.
That's the opening. Yeah. So, I mean, you want to stretch
that out.
So
the futures said, 800-900 points. They're already down 1,600.
Yeah. Was it only 800 in the futures? I thought it was more than that.
Well, overnight it was higher, but an hour before it opened, it was in the 700 to 800 range.
All right. Oh, so
they've already doubled it.
Oh. Well, that's bad. So what?
And we're beating our benchmark, which is 1,300 days for Trump's.
Right. That's true too. So it was better as over under than anything else. That's a good number to stick with. So looks about 36,700. It would just be the Dow in this.
You remember when it was 40,000? I do.
Sure, last week.
Yeah.
It was 45,000.
I remember when it was 43,000.
Yeah. Well, we've had a good run, and they're out there trying to pretend it's a correction, whatever. But no. By the way, that next round of protests, I checked the calendar. So April 19th is the Saturday between Good Friday and Awesome Sunday, Easter. It's nothing. There's no name for it. So now it's going to be a pretty good Saturday in the middle, I guess. Also, by the way, major announcement with ramifications for the show. Eastern Orthodox Easter is the same damn day as
well, that's something you keep
Western
track of
Unorthodox Easter.
For 3 months after Easter's already gone.
Right. I mean, I thought I was waiting for Eastern Orthodox Thanksgiving to come around this week, but no, they've decided. I don't know what they decided, but it's the same. It's according to my phone, which might be AI slop. I don't know. Maybe AI has ruined it. But Greece, give me a call. Tell me when you're doing Easter.
So I sent you another picture of the stock market. This is a 5-day instead of a 1-day.
Yeah, okay. It's still not good. But it doesn't look like
the tariffs are announced on April 2nd, where the market was above 42,000, and it's now 36,700. So it's fallen by 5,000 points, 12% over the last 5 days. And again, you have to step back and remember
I
this
don't
is
have
all
to.
being done by one person, one party. One
That's
person
true.
doing it, one party refusing to do anything about it. And so
Yeah.
this is a
Yeah.
Republican disaster. This is a Republican debacle. This
Hmm.
is a Republican recession.
They have the trifecta.
They do. They run the government.
Yeah. And
And as Paul Waldman
and
points out, the other
oh,
Waldman that's not related to you.
right.
I feel
There are
obligated to
many.
say that every time I mention his name. There's a lot of Waldmans not related to you, but this particular one, Paul Waldman, is fairly well
Also
known in our
not.
circles and
Yes.
also not related to you. We're going to have a recession. Are Trump and Republicans going to do anything about it? The government usually
Yes.
works to cushion
Abscond.
the blow. Maybe not this time. I would add, except for farmers.
Hmm.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Well, it's going to be really interesting, and here's our knock-on effects that they probably weren't thinking of. They may very well want to do that, and I've imagined for a long time that Trump was going to impose all sorts of economic harms, cuts to the budget, whatever, closures of bureaus, and then when favored groups cried, reinstate them. So it's entirely possible that he may say, sure, short-term pain for everyone, but farmers are extremely pro-Trump, so that we'll give relief to the farmers. I'm now sort of wondering, supposing he says, yes, checks to the farmers, and then you take that, I guess you go over to Treasury and you say, Treasury, checks to the farmers, and then
Trump
Treasury
checks.
says, yeah.
You have
and
to
then,
put my
of
name on it in
course,
big letters.
yes, absolutely. And then the Treasury guy says, Treasury employees, and then there's just crickets. Hey,
Yeah.
send out the checks, and we're all fired.
I want you to print Trump dollars.
Yeah. Where are they? Where are the people who were supposed to? We fired them 3 weeks ago.
So Paul
Email them, bring them
Waldman,
back.
Paul,
Turn
well,
those
yeah,
machines back on. Yeah.
yeah, right. RFK Jr.
Hmm.
says that they're going to hire back 20% of the people they hired by mistake, except he hasn't, and he was lying because they all lie. I mean, and I
And
don't
they
know
have
how long it
measles.
takes for people to understand. You cannot believe a single thing they say. The news media still handles it as a presidential pronouncement from the Rose Garden or the
Yeah.
briefing room. They're lying to your face. They always do. What is wrong with you? How long does it take for you to understand?
I missed
Slap,
that
slap,
lie.
slap, slap, slap. Wake up.
I missed that lie entirely. Although I suppose, yeah, I mean, I guess I could see why it might be somewhat. Well, it's certainly comforting to believe it. Like, oh, look, well, I said they made a mistake. Now they're kind of sort of admitting it and saying we got to hire them back. But even if they wanted to do that, and it appears that they do not, I don't know how they do it. We went through this in like 17 other agencies already. You fire people and then you say, oh,
this one in
mistake,
particular,
rehire them. And then
Yeah.
they can't find them, or people have moved on, or they're working at Walmart, or they've built a manufacturing plant and are making widgets to get around the widget tariff here in America.
Paul Waldman talked to 3 different economists about what the GOP government might actually do, and some suggested
Nothing.
possibilities. The traditional ones try to help people in need, and then they looked at each other and said, nah. They're going to offer tax cuts with their magical power to create limitless prosperity, lift our hearts, improve crop yields, comfort the grieving, and clear up your psoriasis.
With which, yeah, I see
Tax cuts, that'll do it.
Oh, okay. I see.
Republicans are always happy to do
ads
tax.
all the
It's
time.
snake oil. They're going to try to do that. Now, the economists could be wrong, and it's possible there might not be a
Sure, of
recession, but
course.
the administration's already trying to spin the coming downturn, a little disturbance, a detox period. I got to operate to heal the patient.
Okay. Patient
Right.
survived. Right.
Somebody was
well.
passing around a cartoon. It's totally non-political, but it was, to me, funny. Maybe not to anybody else. A surgeon dressed in
You're selling
OR
it.
gear
Yeah.
is speaking to a grieving wife and says, your husband was a fighter to the end. Luckily, I had a scalpel.
He won.
And so, yeah, I mean, like, how are you helping me? How are you helping me with what you are doing, government? Why should I ever vote for you again? And, this is the same old cycle, right? Republicans ruin the economy, Democrats fix it. because they were voted in by unhappy people. And after it's fixed, they then vote for Republicans who ruin the economy. And then they vote in Democrats to fix it, rinse and repeat. And we're in that cycle again.
So, all right. Well, so the Paul Waldman, where was that? Where did that run?
That ran in his Substack piece
Okay.
called The Cross Section, and I think I sent it, but if I didn't, I'm going to send it right now.
Okay. I'm just trying to keep up.
Yeah, well, that's what I say every morning when I get on the show.
Yeah, keeping up with Substacks. Is there a package deal where you can just get?
Yeah, you can get a bunch for a certain price. And the other thing is you can always go to their homepage and just look and see what's being put out there because they list them. And with tiles, so you get a sense of what's going on. And they put them by most recent, so you can look at the most recent ones. And a lot of them, you could read them without paying for them.
That's true.
1 or 2 times. So very much worth, just peeking.
Worth browsing. If I know people are unhappy with Substack ownership, etc. I don't know if I can fix that one, but there are some alternatives are emerging. But for the most part, actually, I was more concerned with the idea that it's getting to be like, now with streaming services, I have to subscribe to 19 things to see what I want to see.
I sent you the link.
All right.
It's substack.com/home.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you get a sense of what they're offering. For example, cross section, we're about to have recession, the one we just did. Another one that I put into the pundit roundup right after that. Trump is crashing the economy in his presidency by Dan Pfeiffer. Raising prices when everybody's mad about high prices is political self-destruction. I mean, this stuff does take time to work in, even to farmers, but it's there. It's real.
Yep.
And it's going to have an effect.
And it's just a question of how open people who are getting hurt are to hearing about what's hurting them. And some people will just close themselves off no matter what.
It may be that you don't get what you want from Fox News because they take the Chiron and chart and graph about the market crashing off. However, if your 401k's tank, if you get fired, you don't need Fox News to tell you what's going on.
That is also true. We'll see whether it sinks in with people. And there are, of course, the rest of the world besides the right wing spinosphere. He's got a long history with the tariff claims, and you don't have to have the kind of memory. Oh, I remember when he made mention of this in the 90s. They'll just remind you of the 2016 campaign, the 2020 campaign, the 2024 campaign, if you can remember that far back. He has been saying it since forever, and it is a remarkable reversal of the message too. It occurred to me over this weekend as he was saying, there's going to be short-term pain, you've got to take your medicine, et cetera, et cetera. For some reason, one of his quotes that stuck with me was, "Trade wars are good and easy to win," was a line that he delivered probably, and I don't know, maybe it was the 2016 campaign.
Well, the one that stuck with me was prices are going to go down on day one.
Yes, that. And Josh Marshall.
But that's already passed, and you can judge it, and he failed.
Yeah. I don't remember who's been sharing this thing. Maybe one of the online commentators is saying, I saw this sign every day in the campaign. I passed those yard signs too. Kamala, high prices. Trump, low prices. It was just
Kamala, crime. Trump, prosperity.
Law and order, and stuff like that. But the high prices, low prices. It was very clear. And these are good and easy to win, and I'm going to change things on day one. And then not only did he not change them he changed a lot of things on day one, but the prices was not one of them. Now that he's actually getting around to doing something, hey, it's the opposite. Oh, but don't worry. Just going to have a little medicine. Yeah, it is the opposite.
But I think what he needs to do is he needs to convene a small working group of his most trusted expert advisors like Laura Loomer and figure out who to fire.
Yeah. Well, she came in and took care of that. You got to fire the Air Force generals.
Well, I was just on this security side, something she's an expert in.
Well,
but
naturally,
I think that she's also an expert on the economy just as much as she is on national security. So why not, fire some economic people?
Exactly. She'll come in with some Greek letters, beta, alpha, chi. There you go. Fire these guys. That's it. Or I'm worried about delta, epsilon, iota, DEI in English, and we got to get rid of all of that. So I don't know. This is she's a big story. There was another big story of a firing that happened over the weekend too, not getting as much attention because everything else was going on, but more Justice Department firings, including the lawyer who was arguing in court about the abductions / deportations, as the administration calls them, and admitting to the judge, the basic fact is we did not have an arrest warrant for this person that we sent off, and we did not pay any attention to the fact that there was a judicial order preventing his deportation. I'm not really sure why that happened. I don't really have any good answers, but what can I tell you? This is the court date. And the judge, of course, understandably angry, but in addition, the DOJ angry and fired the attorney in the middle of this.
You can't tell the truth. What the heck is wrong with you? You can't handle the truth.
Which is, it's got all sorts of enormous implications for non-lawyers, but people who have a sense of what lawyers do. There is a duty of candor to the court. This is absolutely something you can be fined, sanctioned or disbarred for. Sanctions. Right. And the DOJ is saying, listen, it's DOJ policy. There will be no candor with the courts, which is also, by the way, the basis of a lot of the deferences that we've been talking about. We got to take the government's word for things when there's no obvious answer. A lot of that is going to be undermined by a DOJ policy against candor. So,
well, the other thing to note is a lot of the right-wing influencers, as they like to call themselves, are now all calling for don't worry about money. It's just a construct. It's no big deal. I don't know if you saw that, but it's pretty hysterical stuff. I mean, that's really going to convince people.
That's good for consumer confidence. You don't need money, trade chickens. Oh, that was a thing once. All right. I'll see you on Wednesday. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Our host has ended the meeting. It's interesting, too. One guy is the host of the show. The other guy is the host of the meeting. That's just the way it's going to have to be for now on. So, by the way, I'll open up the door for comments. They don't have to come during the show. Many of you won't hear the question until later as the podcast anyway, and that's part of the question. Sound quality and mix is the question. Greg was saying that he's been listening to some of the podcasts of the show and that during the show, the mix of our sound as between his headphones and my headphones is great. All the levels are just right. But that on the podcast, the music levels are too high and the voices too low, which for the podcast, I think is something we can actually fix fairly easily as we record them all on different tracks, thanks to the genius of my in-house editor staff, who, by the way, is trained in economics and has been, dismayed over the events of the last couple of days. But it shouldn't affect the editing skills. Still, so we can change that, I think. The question is whether on the live stream how the mix is. And some of these things got changed because of Zoom. Some of these things got changed because we tinkered with other stuff on account of moving over to Zoom. So some is Zoom's fault. Let's say mostly Zoom. This is you. Also, commercial breaks. I've heard that comment as well, Greg. Yeah, commercial breaks are loud, like you're watching TV and the commercials are too loud. And on the stream, the commercials on the stream are on Justice's end, which means that I'm sure he can adjust that with a tweak on the knobs there as well. On the podcast end, we can fix anything, I would think, on the podcast end. So, okay. I guess the real question is, so for people listening live, how the mix is. And I guess that I could hear the commercials during the break possibly being too loud too. That's an easy fix. I don't know whether we can fix them all or not. We'll find out by responding to your complaints. And if not, April 19th is your opportunity to get out and protest against the Kagro in the Morning show and its audio mix. Make sure you make signs and give people the URL so they can hear what crummy show are you listening to where the sound is so bad. Let everybody know so that they can start listening. And we should be advertising at this thing. The local protest to which I attended. Which I attended, to which I went in order to attend, says that, there were some speakers at the event, and one of which was somebody I recognized from online, like, Blue Sky / the olden days on Twitter. Glenn Kirshner. And he's got a podcast apparently, he's talking about him. He's making his videos for Justice Matters. Everybody loves that formulation, the blank matters formulation. Very good one. Media Matters, I think, first one in the pool on that subject. But anyway, he was speaking at the thing, and he made mention of, the fact that he was making those videos and where to find them. And I thought, oh, yeah, here's an opportunity. There's probably, I wonder if there were any KITM listeners in the crowd. So there was some people somewhere at protests, and you could be evangelizing for it if I had, given you the materials to do that. Put a sticker on your sign next time. Anyway, let's see. All right, so notes coming in. Commercials are loud in comparison to live audio. However, compared to all other streams and podcasts, I'm much quieter. Okay, so most podcasts, I guess, boost the voice like that, and I don't know. We're very understated here. Except when we're playing fanfares for Greg. So I don't know. We'll see whether we can contemplate changes that make sense for people. But for now, the news. And imagine this news, but louder, is going to be my advice to you. All right. Well, anyway, let's see. We could probably boost my signal in the middle of... I guess I could turn some knobs here on... Let's see, audio hijack. We could do that. Where's my microphone? I don't even know where I am on this thing. Okay. I'm already boosted into 3x overdrive. So, I don't know. Anyways, let's see. Oh, Greg has sent a new suggestion here for... Wow, what is this? Holy moly. This is a long URL. Something from... that Elon Musk's place, Lawrence Summers. Oh, is this the... Yeah. Oh, this is one of the things that he used as the one of the links from in the show. Okay, never mind. All right. Now I wanted to move on, and let me give you some more background on what I was talking about with the DOJ. The New York Times wrote this up, and by the way, the Times is not the only one covering this. I think I had some Washington Post stuff too. Let's see. Let me. Maybe the place to start is on the Washington Post report of what went on in the hearing, and then follow up with the New York Times story, unless they overlap, about what happened to the lawyer who participated in that hearing. We're talking here about a hearing on the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who is the man from Maryland, the Salvadoran-born immigrant here under protected status. But part of the problem was that the Trump administration ignored, probably purposefully, it seems, ignored his protected status and shipped him off not only to El Salvador, but to prison in El Salvador. And at the heart of all of this is this weird supermax prison that the crazy president of El Salvador has built. He originally built it to house his own hardened gang criminals. They're in a constant state of war with their street gangs there, and it's a little bit questionable, who is and isn't in a street gang, who isn't in the government. But anyway, so he's built this thing, and he's offered to do this really fully illegal and unconstitutional for us thing, which is to house our prisoners there. But we kind of met him halfway on this thing. It should be obvious that just sending American prisoners to be incarcerated overseas is illegal and unconstitutional. But as I said, they met them halfway by saying, well, why don't we send you deportees that we can't agree with their country of origin to accept them back, but we don't want to hold them here. Now, it's, tough crap. You got to hold them here. That's the only thing that there really is to do with them. But I guess because they're not, the immigration officials here don't consider them American nationals or eligible to remain in the country for various reasons, they want them out and don't want to pay very much to hold them. So there's this other solution. And it might pass muster, possibly, maybe, but I don't think so. It shouldn't. But it could with weird right-wing courts. It might pass muster to say, let's take people who are not American citizens who are, if you had given them due process, you might actually come to the conclusion that they're not entitled to remain in the United States. But they are Venezuelan in origin, and if Venezuela is not going to give permission to send people back, not going to give landing permission to planes that are deporting them, what are we going to do with them if we refuse to have them and house them in this country? And the possible solution, well, what about if El Salvador says we'll hold them? Well, that raises all sorts of questions like who's in charge of these people and what rights, and even if you don't even reach the question of what rights do they have, none, because that's the whole point. What rights do we have as the contracting authority here? If we're paying the Salvadoran government to warehouse people that we're sending them, what rights do we have about how they're treated, or for how long they're held, or under what conditions might they be released? Or what do we do in this case, like with this guy? If we've made a mistake and we need one of these guys back, what happens? And that's what's at the heart of this case. And amazingly, the DOJ is arguing once we've shipped them out of the country, we don't have any ability to do anything about it. Like the judge in this case says, you've screwed up and you've sent this guy to prison in El Salvador. It's wrong. Bring him back. We want to do like a habeas corpus type proceeding here and produce this guy. Bring him back so that we can adjudicate what should we have done here and impose the will of the court. And the DOJ is saying, too bad. We don't have them. You can't order us to do it. We don't have them. And you can't order El Salvador to do it because they're El Salvador and not us. And that's the basic problem with paying another country to hold people. By the way, when the less lack of imagination on the part of the DOJ officials thinking this through, if that's what they've done, they're not unhappy with the outcome here because they don't, in this case, want or care to produce this guy and give him justice. They don't care about that. The question, though, arises, what if there were someone that they did care about doing justice for? Or, if you can't imagine them doing that, what if the government of El Salvador is just collecting those payments and then just saying, tell you what, put on these sunglasses, a hat, and a fake mustache on top of your real mustache, and we're going to release you out the back door, and we don't care what happens to you. And people say, well, they're not going to want to release, indigent migrants into El Salvador. That's just going to make their problems worse. Maybe they don't want to do that. That, sounds logical enough, but we don't know what they're up to. maybe they are. What if the government of Venezuela says, we'll give you $50 for every one of those guys you let back, let them out, and we'll pick them up and take them back to Venezuela? What if they're saying, I don't know, cook up the schemes. They don't have to be smart schemes. There's plenty of room for dumb at this point in the game. Release them out the back door. Here's a bottle of water. There's the U.S. border in that direction. Good luck to you. Take a walk. Why? I don't know. One, they don't want them to stay in El Salvador. Two, they might be saying, go get rounded up at the border, the Mexico-U.S. border again, and deported here again. We'll take another fee for warehousing you. We'll just tell you, oh yeah, that's not, I don't know, pick your name. Pedro Martinez. It's Juan Martinez. He's got a different name. Where are we? Still got Pedro. You need to keep paying us. Like, when is Dodgy going to say, are we sure that we're getting what we're paying for here? At the bottom line, maybe the only thing that they possibly would care about in this whole situation is, are we getting what we paid for here? And if we are, then how come you can't produce this guy? I mean, that's really the judge's question. Is if we're like the contracting authority here, why can't we say our money entitles us to forcing you to cough this guy up if we wanted to? Because the DOJ doesn't want that to happen for various reasons, probably mostly linked to, I think I saw somebody on Blue Sky say, if you have built a supermax prison that you pride yourself in saying nobody ever gets out of this prison, right? And it's a black hole. Well, one, you can get away with all sorts of abuses there if no one ever gets out. But if sometimes people do get out, well, they'll be able to tell you what goes on inside one of these black hole supermax prisons, and that's probably bad for El Salvador. Anyway, so here's the write-up from the Washington Post. Judge orders Trump administration to bring back man mistakenly deported. You likely have heard the background details on this case. The case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia has spurred criticism that the Trump administration has imprisoned people for matters that are typically civil violations of immigration law, and that's the kind way of expressing this. The real root of this problem is, yeah, sure, if you are in violation of immigration law, it's a good point as a starting point for the analysis. This is a civil violation, not a criminal violation. So you're not supposed to be incarcerated in a supermax prison for it. And you're not supposed to be incarcerated in a supermax prison from which there's no release no matter what, because it's in a foreign country. That's not what's supposed to be going on here. But in addition to all of that, they also go, in looking into this, well, I should just let them tell the story, but I'm afraid they won't tell you the details. But if they don't, we'll get back to them. But this judge's inquiry, I guess if we really want a long story short this, basically the judge is like, so did you have an arrest warrant for Mr. Garcia? No. Well, then why'd you arrest him? And that's where the attorney for the DOJ is like, I don't know if I have a really good answer for that one. I got to tell you, I'm not sure why it happened, and I keep asking my bosses, and they will not give me an answer. And that's what the DOJ ended up suspending the guy for. All right, well, let me tell you the story the way they tell it. Katie Metler, Maria Sacchetti, and Dana Monroe worked very hard to put this thing together. We'll see whether it covers all the bases or we need to embellish. A federal judge on Friday, remember, this was before the protests now. Everything changed on Saturday. But a federal judge on Friday ordered the Trump administration to secure the release of a man wrongly deported to a mega prison in El Salvador last month and return him to the United States after his lawyers argued that he was at imminent risk of death in that country. And again, I think we've heard these details before. I'm just anxious to spit them out. U.S. District Judge Paula Zinis, maybe Xinis. That's not a surname I've run into before. Zinis, I assume, or Zinis in Maryland, which is where this man was living, directed the administration to arrange the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a Salvadoran immigrant. At least he's Salvadoran. It's not as ridiculous a situation in terms of nationalities as sending Venezuelans to El Salvador, but it's equally ridiculous because he had fled El Salvador, particularly to get away from gangs. and we sent him into the gang prison. But there you have it. A Salvadoran immigrant married to a U.S. citizen, and the administration needs to return or arrange for his return no later than 11:59 p.m. on Monday. That is today. That's midnight tonight is the answer. As the judge issued her order from the bench, his supporters outside the courtroom cheered. The Trump administration immediately appealed the ruling, of course. Officials have argued that they have no power to return Abrego Garcia because he's in the custody of El Salvador, and in particular, the custody of El Salvador President Nayib Bukele. So you got to call that guy and, it goes straight to voicemail. We suggest that now this is an amazing thing. Okay. Caroline Leavitt is just the worst troll of a White House spokesperson ever. And that's saying something. The judge says, look, you got to arrange for this guy's return. As we said, the attorney himself in court is like, hamana. Because what do you say to a judge? It's sitting right there. But from the safety of her perch at the White House press podium, Caroline Leavitt says, oh, yeah? Well, we suggest the judge contact President Bukele because we are unaware of the judge having jurisdiction or authority over the country of El Salvador, which would get you kicked out of court, presumably. Again, though, I urge judges, please, they give you a hammer for a reason. Hit them on the head with it. It's absolutely necessary. Anyway, I don't like to encourage violence, but you could just give them a light rap and remind them who's in charge. But from the safety of the White House, she was able to, snark like that. Bukele posted a photo of a confused-looking cartoon rabbit. Guess he had to be there. In response to a report on the judge's ruling from an X account called End Wokeness. So the president of El Salvador apparently posts under the name End Wokeness. So good luck reasoning with him. The judge's ruling followed an extraordinary admission from a Justice Department lawyer at the hearing on Friday that even he has struggled to obtain answers about why officers deported Abrego Garcia despite a court order forbidding it. It says it, but I'm going to just embellish here. Why officers deported Abrego Garcia despite a court order forbidding the deportation of Abrego Garcia. Because he had fled death threats from gang members in El Salvador. He's here seeking political asylum, running away from violence from gangs in El Salvador. And they said, there's a judge's order that says you cannot deport this guy to El Salvador because he's under death threat from the gangs there. And they didn't, I don't know whether they knew it or not, but they ignored it regardless. And the judge says, how could this happen? Dodgy efficiency, guys. And the answer is, I really don't know. Oh, also, you're fired for not knowing, for saying you don't know. Anyway, the Trump administration deported the longtime Maryland resident to a prison filled with alleged gang members, although that turns out to maybe not be true, too. Well, there's definitely some gang members in there. The people we tend to send them turn out not to be gang members. Apparently, that was the subject of 60 Minutes report last night, that what they were able, 75% or so of the people deported in this stunt of flying people down to the prison in El Salvador, they could find no criminal records for whatsoever. So are they gang members? Don't know. Not sure. And by the same token, by the way, also reports unconfirmed at this point, but I did see some rumors circulating on reports circulating on social media that while you're doubting what the administration says about the people that it's visiting these harms on, it turns out that the big Signalgate, just to put that back in the news, the big Signalgate leak about the attack on the Houthis, about which Donald Trump is also posting and circulating video of the drone strikes, the missile strikes, in this operation, which, arguably a war crime, but hey, anyway, showing the video of these strikes and saying, of course, we've killed all these Houthis. These Houthis were in Yemen planning an attack against America, and we blew them up. And, well, it's not entirely clear whether or not the people killed were actually Houthis, just as it's not entirely clear that these people are Venezuelan or gang members or anything, or criminals of any kind. We're just not really sure. Caroline Leavitt is willing to say so because, hey, look, there's no penalty for just lying to the press, right? It's if you're in court and you lie to the courts, there's going to be some penalties. But if you just lie to the press, it's not like it's some high tribunal or something. That was the boss last time around. Anyway, the State Department, to return to the Washington Post reporting here, the State Department, which said it had negotiated with El Salvador to house deportees, and I should like to see whatever agreement came out of that. But of course, that's secret and you can't see it. I'm just curious whether or not they put in there. And if we're paying, we also demand the ability to make sure that the people we paid to house there are still there. And if we need them back, we want them back. But they didn't think about that part of it. There's probably no agreement about what if you want the people back. They just figured black and white, in to the prison, and then I don't care what happens with you. State Department, which said it had negotiated with El Salvador to house deportees, referred questions to the Department of Homeland Security somehow, even though they're not in the homeland. DHS reiterated its argument that Abrego Garcia is a member of the MS-13 gang with ties to the United States and El Salvador. DHS spokeswoman Tricia McLaughlin said the agency has intelligence reports that he is also involved in human trafficking, but without providing any evidence. Also, he rigged the election, I'm sure, right? Also without evidence. Everything's without evidence. And guess where evidence is supposed to be used, or else you don't get your way? Court. Yeah, that was one of the problems. At the hearing on Friday, Zinis, the judge, said she would not consider discussion of the government's allegations of the man's alleged gang activity, saying no evidence has been presented to support that. So, well, he's a gang member. Do you have any evidence of that? No. Well, then you're not allowed to bring it up in my court. So the end. Until you have evidence that he's actually in a gang, I don't want to hear about that again. The case drew dozens of Abrego Garcia's supporters to the federal courthouse in Greenbelt on Friday. Demonstrators called on Maryland lawmakers who are weighing immigration-related legislation to restrict state and local cooperation with U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement at a time when the Trump administration is trying to carry out one of the largest numbers of deportations in U.S. history, right? So lots of pushback on the local level in Maryland and everywhere about maybe we shouldn't be cooperating with ICE. Why? Because they keep making these weird mistakes like not gathering any evidence, not getting an arrest warrant, and violating standing court orders. And they say they can't get you back whether or not there's a mistake or not. But if there is a mistake, we can't get you back. But one of the reasons we don't give you due process is you could discover a mistake in that. And then if you did that, well, then this whole regime falls apart. Then what? Anyway, lawyers had filed an emergency lawsuit seeking Abrego Garcia's return last month. It's been there a long time. U.S. officials argued that beyond the administration being powerless to effectuate his return, Abrego Garcia's lawyers have, quote, not clearly shown, unquote, that he would face harm in the prison. But of course, they only contracted with that prison because they were hoping people would face harm. Abrego Garcia's lawyer argued in court records that the government's claims are outrageous and alleged the Trump administration has washed their hands of him, his wife, and their autistic and nonverbal 5-year-old son, who is a U.S. citizen. They are coming before this court and saying, we've tried nothing and we're all out of options. Simon Sandoval-Moshenberg, you remember him, told Zinis, an Obama nominee, at the Friday hearing. The hasty removal of Abrego Garcia and hundreds of other immigrants to El Salvador's notorious terrorism confinement center, where human rights groups have said inmates have faced beatings and shortages of food and water, has spurred criticism that the Trump administration has imprisoned people for matters that are typically civil violations of immigration law. Government officials have argued that they are deporting serious offenders, but they have not identified most of them or provided evidence to support their allegations. Now, it's one thing to say, well, this is usually a civil violation, not a criminal one. But even in civil violations, you get due process. So the more basic argument here is you're not even inquiring about whether or not you have the right person. at any stage. During the hearing, Justice Department lawyer Erez Reuveni, maybe, Reuveni, Erez Reuveni, conceded, and that was his big mistake with respect to his bosses. He conceded that the U.S. government should not have deported Abrego Garcia because of that standing order not to deport him, probably, but said he was unable to answer the judge's questions about the government's legal authority to do so. I mean, that's the basic question here. Some due process is happening. Zenas asks, on what authority was he seized? Well, my answer to a lot of these questions is going to be frustrating, Reuveni said, and I'm frustrated that I don't have answers to a lot of these questions. Well, that is candor, isn't it? We'll be right back. Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So it sounds like if I just briefly checked in on Blue Sky to see what people are discussing and what's happening in the markets, and I guess like we said, the markets plunged down to about 36,000, 36.5, let's say, and at that point, people began, I guess, doing their best damage control, and Treasury Secretary, I guess, said, well, we may end up putting on the 90-day pause to try to negotiate with various countries. Everybody except China. China's not going to get a break, but everybody else, maybe we'll have that negotiation. And then the market started climbing back upward and regained some of its losses from this morning. And then I guess they asked around over at the White House, and let's see, what's this one here? And now hearing comments attributed to CNBC that nobody at the White House is aware of any 90-day pause. So I guess, whatever. Good luck, everybody. And then the market started plunging back downward again. So I guess it made it back to, I can't see the numbers on this axis here, but the Dow Jones shot up and is now dropping back down like a rock. I don't know where we stand at the moment, but not a great day on the market. But I was busy telling you about not a great day in court for anybody, really. But as we left off, the beginning of this exchange being reported between the judge and the DOJ lawyer. The judge asking, like I said, the very basic question: on what authority was this man seized? Right? Did you have an arrest warrant? Was there anything? Was there any sort of administrative order from ICE that said this guy in particular? Why this guy is the real question. On what authority, on what basis was this guy? There's plenty of people you could have seized and sent to El Salvador. I don't want you to, but why him? And the DOJ lawyer, again, let me give it another shot at the pronunciation here, right? It's Erez Reuveni. Is my best guess at Reuveni. No idea, whether I'm anywhere like it or not, but okay, or anywhere in the neighborhood. Anyway, so on what authority is he being seized? And Ravani says, my answer to a lot of these questions is going to be frustrating. And I'm frustrated that I don't have answers to a lot of these questions. He's looking not to get killed by the judge, but recognizing my position, not only not strong, but in fact very bad here. I don't know the answers to that. And I mean, it's one thing to not know hey, nobody's perfect. You know, what can I tell you? You don't get all the answers, right? You're not going to get them all right. But when the question involves, like, on what authority was this person deprived of their liberty? You know, arrested or taken into custody, however you want to form, but deprived of their liberty, right? And you remember, of course, you're not to be deprived of life, liberty, or property, but by due process of law. So what sorts of things do we usually look for when it comes to depriving people of their liberty? But it's okay because due process, arrest warrants supported by evidence and affidavits. No, you don't have one? No. Well, that's a really huge problem. Yeah. But I'm just as frustrated as you, Your Honor. Okay, I understand that. We're not going to hit you with the hammer because you're being contrite here. But I mean, still, there's a huge problem. The government, which you represent, doesn't have any basis for having taken this guy into custody domestically, much less shipping him to a black hole and then saying, well, we don't know what we can do about it. We don't have him. Come on. Holy cow. Zinnis noted that the government lacked an arrest warrant or other documents to support his detention. A sign of what? A sign that, quote, from the moment he was seized, it was unconstitutional. Right. You know, you can't deprive him of liberty, but by some kind of due process, even if it's not an arrest warrant, sometimes it's just a search order, a removal order from ICE, which people are pointing out on social media all the time, correctly pointing out if it's not an arrest warrant signed by a judge, you can't come in, right? If they show up at your house, knock, knock, it's the police. We know so and such an immigrant person is in there. We're coming to collect them. Do you have a warrant for their arrest? And they'll say, we got an order. An order from what? It's not a court order, right? Well, no, it's not. It's an order from ICE saying, it's a work order, a routing slip. Go find this person and bring them in. On what authority? Well, usually we have authority, but we skip that part. And that's the problem. There's an order, but is it backed by an arrest warrant? If not, go away. Well, guess what? This one wasn't backed by an arrest warrant, and he was deprived of his liberty nonetheless. So it's unconstitutional. If they had kept him here in the United States, they would have said, yeah, still unconstitutional, let him out. But we can't. We disappeared him to the moon. Sorry. What? And so, again, now the question being put by the judge. What is the actual document that gave these officers the ability to start this process? Do you have an arrest warrant? We don't have one. What document did you have? Why did these officers get out of bed in the morning and say, Abrego Garcia, that's the guy we're going to go get? What made them do that? Basic question. All right, fine. You don't have an arrest warrant. Maybe there's something else I can accept. What made them go arrest this guy? That is not in the record. And the government has not put that in the record. Ravani responded. And that's the best I can do. He's there defending this case. He's like, I don't know why they took Abrego Garcia into custody. They took him into custody because they think he's an illegal immigrant. That's questionable all by itself because he's got legal status. But the basic question, why him? I really don't know. There's no list. They didn't get a list like go arrest these guys. Nothing that I've seen. Nobody has put anything into evidence. So not only is there no evidence that he's a gang member, no evidence that he's in violation of his legal status, there's no evidence as to what would motivate a immigration official to go collect him. Not even that. No judge can accept this. It's impossible to countenance. And that's why we are where we are. And I think not reflected in this report, there was some immediate appeal, as we said, from the Trump administration, and an immediate follow-up by the judge with an additional order saying, you have to go. There's no stay pending appeal here either. You got to go and do something about this. My order stands. This has to be arranged by midnight on Monday night, heading into Tuesday, 11:59 Monday, or else what? I'm not sure, but that's the deadline. And the reason it has to be the deadline is you haven't even got evidence as to why the officers thought that was a name they should be interested in, and you can't come up with it. So this is as illegal as it ever effing gets. No other relief can be countenanced. I mean, name it. What else should be done about this? There's only one solution. Produce this person and let us bring him into court here in the United States and figure this out. What will be the basis upon which I release him from U.S. custody? That's what needs to be decided. There's no other way to do this. And, well, whatever. Why can't the United States get Mr. Abrego Garcia back? Zenas later asked. Rovani says, when this case landed on my desk, I asked my clients that very question, my clients being the immigration folks. To date, I have not received an answer that is satisfactory. I mean, he may have received this answer. Go F yourself. Shut up. Go back in there. Get in there. Turn those machines back on. Right. You just go in there and say, USA America, number one. We're the best. Trump rules. Say anything. Doesn't matter. I need evidence. There isn't any. We just grabbed this guy for no reason. I mean, the problem is it may come down to, there may have been a list, and I don't know why they don't want to share the list. Maybe they threw it out. Print it again. No, I guess what's at the bottom of this is the judge is basically asking, did you walk down the street and see a brown guy and just grab him and be like, you must be an illegal immigrant? Was there something more? Anything you've got. Did you just luck out? Oh, he's Salvadoran. We didn't even realize that. We thought he was, from Honduras. We didn't know where he was from. It didn't matter. He was brown and we grabbed him. Oh, El Salvador? Great. Even if it's something stupid. I heard that guy was from El Salvador. Somebody told me he was. Right? There was that police report in which somebody once said, oh, that guy? Yeah. And not only is he Salvadoran, big MS-13 guy. Did you keep that note somewhere and did you pass that on to ICE? Just show me that. That won't be legally sufficient, but is that what you did? Your Honor, I don't know. There's nothing. The case tapped into worries over the Trump administration's more aggressive efforts to detain or deport immigrants. Yeah, it did tap into those worries, including those who have temporary protected status, student visas, or even green cards permitting them to reside in the United States. Abrego Garcia, 29 years old, who arrived in the U.S. around 2011, that's quite a while ago. He's 29 years old, and that is, some 14 years ago? So 29, 19, 15 years old or so. He's been there since he's half of his life. Abrego Garcia, who arrived in the U.S. around 2011, was stopped on March 12th while driving to his home in a D.C. suburb from his mother's house, with his 5-year-old autistic son in the back seat. So was it like a traffic stop when your taillights is out, speeding, driving while brown? What happened here? Nothing. I've got nothing. Our entire family is broken, said Abrego Garcia's wife, Jennifer, at a rally in Hyattsville before the hearing. Every day that goes by, I'm reminded of laughs that are now silenced in our home and in our hearts. And that's good heartstring stuff. But just on the legal basis alone, this is horrifying all by itself. You can't even offer an explanation as to why his car got stopped. Nothing. How do you let that stand? Maryland lawmakers are considering several bills aimed at preventing such arrests, like maybe a constitution would be helpful in preventing such arrests, including barring localities from having cooperation agreements with the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And while everybody is saying, you liberal leftists are trying to get in the way of cooperating with the government, you're communists, you're undermining it. Well, all we're asking you to do is follow the Constitution. Remember, you love that thing. You took an oath to uphold it, etc. Shut up. No, I didn't. But that effort has stalled, even that little effort. Let's have a law that says we're not going to cooperate with ICE unless they honor the Constitution. Well, hold on there. That effort has stalled, in part because of fear from Maryland officials that such a ban would stoke White House retaliation. Senate President Bill Ferguson, Democrat of Baltimore, said on Friday. How do you like that? We're afraid that they will illegally retaliate against us for telling them that we will only work with them if they abide by the Constitution. Can't tell them that. Crazy? They'll kill us. That's problematic. It's worthy of protest. It's worthy of impeachment. We don't have the numbers for that impeachment, but what about a protest? Well, I don't know. We have to recognize the very true reality that there are consequences that have been issued from the federal government about what happens with states that do not comply with certain immigration orders, Ferguson said, or for that matter, orders or what Trump thinks of as orders about women's sports, says he's punishing Maine for having the audacity to say, we'd actually like to adjudicate your position in court. Well, how dare you? We're going to withhold federal funding from you. That, as somebody pointed out on Blue Sky this morning, that by itself should be considered grounds for impeachment, telling states that they won't get any federal funding because I don't like your governor. You're not doing the things I'm saying you should be doing. Lawyers for Abrego Garcia say the U.S. government has falsely portrayed him as a gang member leading up to the hearing to justify his removal. Well, you could bring us paperwork that says you think he's a gang member. But then, of course, that would be challenged and you would look foolish because it would be undermined and dismissed. So they'd rather just not show the paper at all. Especially if they can just keep him in prison, despite the fact that they don't have to justify their position, which is amazing. U.S. officials have admitted in court that they were aware of an immigration judge's prior order barring his removal. That's interesting. They were aware of it. I think we've heard that. They just didn't do anything about it. And they blamed his deportation on an administrative error, which is, I guess, a euphemism for saying either we don't care and we ignored it, or I guess the best interpretation is person A did, in fact, read somewhere or hear somewhere that there was a court order preventing Abrego Garcia's deportation. But person B, who made the list of people to go arrest without a warrant for deportation, hadn't heard that. That's the most charitable thing you can say about this. And any other explanation is only worse than that. And that is not enough to keep him in prison. Sandoval Moshenberg said, that's the lawyer, said in court records filed this week that it is inexplicable that the U.S. government is failing to take steps to rectify its mistake. Plaintiff has requested that this court order defendants to request his return from the government of El Salvador. I mean, it's a little unusual. There's no real procedure for this because it's never been done. Please house our civil violators of immigration law as criminals in another country. It's never happened. Plaintiff requested that the court order defendants to request his return from El Salvador. First, just ask them nicely to please give him back to us, he wrote in court filings on Wednesday. How are we going to get El Salvador to give him back? Have you asked? No. We've tried nothing and we're all out of options, right? An immigration judge appointed during the Trump administration in 2019 barred the federal government from returning Abrego Garcia to El Salvador or on humanitarian grounds after finding that he had a legitimate fear of being persecuted by the Barrio 18 gang. Abrego Garcia said the gang had attempted to extort money from his mother's pupusa shop and tried to recruit him to join the gang. He fled to the United States when he was 16. There, they did the math for me. Abrego Garcia's lawyers said he had no criminal record in the United States or in El Salvador. His immigration troubles began in March of 2019 when he said police in Prince George's County detained him and other young men looking for construction work at Home Depot, according to federal court records. Police questioned Abrego Garcia about gang activity, but he said he wasn't in a gang. It's a good answer. Authorities then transferred him to ICE. Authorities have not charged him with any crimes. They couldn't come up with any evidence that would stand up, I guess. Vance and the Department of Homeland Security, are we talking about J.D. Vance? I don't think he's actually come up in this story yet. Vance and the Department of Homeland Security have said Abrego Garcia is a gang member. That's true. He's not. I mean, it's true that they've said that. J.D. Vance said he was convicted of being a gang member. That would be a public record, of course. And wow, golly, we can't find that one. But Vance, now it's downgraded to, well, Vance said Abrego is a gang member, citing a Baltimore immigration judge's 2019 ruling denying him bond pending a full hearing based on a confidential informant's allegation. The judge said he was confirmed to be a ranking member of the MS-13 by a proven and reliable source. But no conviction here. He also had failed to show up for traffic court, she said. So something, but you could, if he failed to show up for traffic court, what does it benefit anybody to hold him in El Salvador if you've been waiting for him in traffic court in the United States? After a full hearing later that year, then immigration judge David M. Jones, a former military judge, found, here's a decision by a court, found that Abrego Garcia faced multiple death threats from gangs, calling his testimony credible. He ordered, notwithstanding all of these other allegations, this one guy said, no, he's an MS-13. Notwithstanding that, this judge ordered Abrego Garcia released in October of 2019 with a humanitarian protection called withholding of removal. The government did not appeal that decision, even though Trump was in charge. Abrego Garcia's lawyers said if the U.S. government had wanted to overturn the judge's ruling, they could have sought to reopen immigration court proceedings, and they did not. Before he was apprehended, Abrego Garcia worked as a sheet metal apprentice while studying for his journeyman's license at the University of Maryland. After the hearing, Abrego Garcia's supporters noted that his return will require coordination with the Salvadoran government, an effort further complicated by the appeal. The family has hired an attorney in El Salvador to try to make contact with Abrego Garcia, but no luck, Sandoval Moshenberg said. It'll be a victory when Kilmar is home with his family. It will be. Will they ever get that victory? That we don't know. But the companion piece to this tale is in the New York Times under this headline, Justice Department accuses Abrego Garcia of something? No. Accuses top immigration lawyer of failing to follow orders, even if they're illegal. Erez Ruveni conceded in court that the deportation last month of Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, who had a court order allowing him to stay in the United States, should never have taken place. We learned that much from the Post, but guess what happens? Well, you've already heard what happens. Glenn Thrush, doing the reporting for this piece in the Times, a senior Justice Department immigration lawyer. I guess he's senior. He got to be senior, by the way. They swept out all of the people that they thought were disloyal to Trump in the immigration section at the DOJ. And this guy was the last guy standing, or at least the most senior guy standing. And then presumably passed the loyalty tests in order to make him into, well, probably the acting head of that section. So a senior Justice Department immigration lawyer, that's Erez, was put on indefinite leave Saturday, not totally fired, but indefinite leave on Saturday after questioning the Trump administration's decision to deport a Maryland man to El Salvador, one day after representing the government in court. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche suspended Erez Ruveni, the acting, that's right, he is an acting deputy director of the department's Immigration Litigation Division. Why? For failing to, quote, follow a directive from your superiors, unquote, according to a letter sent to Mr. Ruveni and obtained by the New York Times. What were those orders? What were those directives? Mr. Ravaney, who was praised as a top-notch, I guess past tense, he was top-notched, now he's just out, top-notched, that's what they said, prosecutor by his superiors in an email announcing his promotion 2 weeks ago. Remember? Just we heard he's now the acting deputy director. That happened 2 weeks ago. In the middle of all the nonsense going on here and all the litmus tests, right? You're still good. You're still loyal to the Trump administration. We're going to make you acting deputy director of the DOJ's Immigration Litigation Division. 2 weeks later, he's out. Well, he is the latest career official to be suspended, demoted, transferred, or fired for refusing to comply with a directive from President Trump's appointees to take actions they deem improper or unethical. Now, the directive is not please go take actions that you deem improper or unethical. What they mean, of course, is you need to follow our directives. And if you think that they're improper and unethical and decide not to follow them, we will fire you for not following them, even though you deem them improper or unethical. At my direction, every Department of Justice attorney is required to zealously advocate on behalf of the United States. Attorney General Pam Bondi wrote in a statement to the Times on Saturday. Any attorney who fails to abide by this direction, that's the directive, will face consequences. Now, of course, every Department of Justice attorney is required to zealously advocate on behalf of the United States. That's the job. But they are also required by the court as part of court canon and the power that courts have over attorneys at all. Like, it doesn't work if courts don't have power over attorneys to enforce this stuff. Otherwise, they just come and say, he's a mass murderer. Oh, boy, they're bad. I hate those guys. Let's get rid of him, right? Are you sure he's a mass murderer? No, I'm not. All right, well, that should be fine. Well, that's not the way it's supposed to work. Yes, they're supposed to zealously advocate on behalf of the United States, but they're supposed to do so honestly, in good faith, based on evidence, and with candor to the court. Pam Bondi is saying, if you think that honesty, candor to the court, and the production of evidence will lose us the case and still do it, that's not zealous enough advocacy for the United States. You need to lie. You need to make up evidence. You need to withhold candor from the court. Be dishonest. Tell them whatever it takes in order for us to win. Otherwise, you're in violation of my directive and you're fired. That's tough to comply with. Under questioning by a federal judge on Friday, Mr. Ravaney conceded that the deportation last month of Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, who had a court order allowing him to stay in the United States, should never have taken place. Mr. Ravaney also said he had been frustrated when the case landed on his desk. Mr. Ravaney, a respected 15-year veteran of the Immigration Division, asked the judge for 24 hours to persuade his client, that would be the Trump administration, to begin the process of retrieving and repatriating Mr. Abrego Garcia. And guess what? He got it. You have until midnight Monday, 11:59 p.m. Monday to do it. And now basically the Trump administration is saying, we're not going to do that. I don't even know how to do that. Now we're going to be in trouble. 11:59 is going to come and go, and we won't have done it, and we'll be in violation of a court order. Thanks a lot, Ravaney. You're fired. Why did you ask for 24 hours? Why didn't you ask for 24 years? What's wrong with you? That's essentially the position that they've taken. Well, less than 24 hours later, Mr. Blanche, President Trump's former criminal defense lawyer, accused Mr. Ravaney of, quote, engaging in conduct prejudicial to your client, unquote. Mr. Blanche suspended Mr. Ravaney with pay, cut off access to his work email, and blocked him from performing any duties related to his job. The judge in this case, Paula Zinis of the Federal District Court in Maryland, said that officials had acted without legal basis when they arrested Mr. Abrego Garcia, put him on a plane, and shipped him to a notorious Salvadoran mega prison without due process or even substantial proof of any kind that he had done anything to deserve such treatment. She gave the administration until the end of Monday to return him to the United States, or really even just to arrange, as I thought I read it, for his return to the United States. Early Saturday morning, the Justice Department asked the federal appeals court that sits over Judge Zinis to pause her order to bring Mr. Abrego Garcia back, saying that was neither possible nor proper. Why is it not possible? Because I don't know. That order, department lawyers, DOJ lawyers say that order is indefensible. Foremost, it commands defendants to do something they have no independent authority to do, make El Salvador release Abrego Garcia and send him to America. Why not? You contracted with them to hold him. Aren't you entitled to dispose of him as you will? We don't know, because we don't know what the agreement is, and we'll never find out either. In previous court filings, the Justice Department accused Abrego Garcia of belonging to MS-13, of course. We know about who they are. He's denied it. During the hearing on Friday, Judge Zinis expressed skepticism about a connection between Abrego Garcia and MS-13, noting that there was little proof that he belonged to the gang. In a court of law, when someone is accused of membership in such a violent and predatory organization, it comes in the form of an indictment, a complaint, a criminal proceeding, a robust process so that we can address the facts. I haven't yet heard that from the government. Yeah, because it doesn't exist. Isn't that interesting? The letter to Mr. Ruvani did not make clear how long he would be placed on leave or whether he would face any disciplinary action. Ruvani, unlike other career prosecutors targeted by Mr. Blanche and his deputy, Emile Bove, previously earned praise for executing elements of Mr. Trump's immigration agenda. In a March 21st email announcing Ruvani's promotion to acting deputy director, his boss, Drew Ensign, lauded him for working on cases filed against sanctuary cities accused of defying federal immigration laws and for generally helping to expand the department's litigation activities. He's getting thanks for helping out with all of this immigration activity or deportation activity. Ensign had been handling a separate immigration case, one in which he was defending the Trump administration's use of a rarely invoked wartime law. Ensign's the one defending the use of the Alien Enemies Act to summarily deport scores of Venezuelan migrants accused of belonging to the street gang Tren de Aragua. So it's not without, Ensign is not without his credentials in the Trump administration. He was just recently praising Ruvani as being on the team. And he may even be on the team. But when you're in court and you're asked, what's your evidence, and you don't have it, you can't say, I've got it, but I refuse to show you.
NetworksRadio.com.
Right? That's not going to work.
You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
So, look, this is really concerning. And we've really gotten to the point where attorneys that agree to be honest with the courts are being threatened with the loss of their jobs by the Attorney General. I'm not sure how much worse it gets. But if it gets worse, you'll hear about it next at the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam. We'll see you tomorrow.